When it comes to being lost in the wilderness, it's possible kids have better chances of surviving than adults. Why? Because a mother's instinct is sometimes so strong that it transcends even species. There are numerous true stories of children spending years living with animals. But the number of species that do adopt human babies is astonishing, ranging from birds to bears. Today we look at all known animal species that at one point adopted a child. Number 10. Bears. It is almost unbelievable that a bear would raise a human child. But there are several such stories from the Middle Ages, although only one was recorded in the local archives. The story supposedly took place in Poland in the 17th century. In the spring of 1663, a boy was discovered in the forest living with bears, and he was brought back to society. Sadly, not much more is known of his fate. Number 9. Fish. The story of an amphibious boy Ramachandra comes from India. Although it is not clear which animals he was raised by, and how. The case is really peculiar and shrouded in myth and superstition. The boy was captured in 1973 after being seen for days in the river, with brownish skin, catching and eating raw fish. He couldn't talk, walked on all fours, and it was clear he wasn't raised by humans. The boy quickly escaped back to the wild. And people kept leaving him food on the bank of the river. A local woman later said that she had been raped by an apparition a decade prior, and had a baby. Then, her 1-year-old fell into the river and was swept away. At first, she believed the baby drowned. But after the boy was caught, she recognized a birthmark. It turns out that animals had found him and raised him as their own. Later, a myth started spreading. That the woman had been raped by the ghost of a man that was known to have drowned in a nearby drinking well. And the reason why the boy ran away is because his father had called for him. Ooh, spooky. Number 8. Birds. There are several stories where kids were raised by birds. The latest one comes from Russia, and it's a sad one. Because it shows just how cruel humans can be. Vanya Yudan was a boy that was discovered in 2008 in a room full of birds. It seems as though his mother treated him as a pet, so Vanya started mimicking the sounds and behavior of the birds. When he was rescued, he could only chirp, and human speech was utterly foreign to him. He would express his emotions flapping his arms like birds do wings. Vanya's case is tragic, but believe it or not, the story of Sujit Kumar, of Fiji, is even more disturbing. Supposedly, he was abused by his parents due to his disability. But then it got even worse for the poor boy. His father was murdered, and his mother committed suicide. So his grandfather was appointed guardianship. And he kept the boy locked in the chicken coop for 4 years. The chickens imprinted on Sujit, and he learned to do what they did. By the time he was found, he was behaving more like a chicken than a boy. Then it got perhaps even worse. He was aggressive and non-verbal, so he spent the next 20 years tied to a bed in an institution. Luckily, he was later adopted by an Australian woman that takes care of him now. It's refreshing to see there are still good people out there. Number 7. Cats. This is a rather isolated, but true story. A policewoman was on patrol when she heard weird noises. Intrigued, she followed the noise and noticed a group of cats surrounding something. When she came closer, to her horror, she realized it was a 1-year-old baby. But the cats weren't trying to harm it. They were actually protecting her from the intruding police. The cats hissed and clawed at anyone trying to get near to the baby. It turned out a homeless man lost his baby boy as he was trying to find a place to sleep at. The father later said that his son had an affinity towards cats even prior to the incident. Number 6. Cattle. In Germany, there is a famous story dating to the late 1500s about a boy from Bamberg who was supposedly raised by cows. But even more astonishing is the case of the Kyrgyzstani sheep boy. Supposedly, he lived with a herd of sheep for 8 years. He couldn't speak, and wearing clothes was totally foreign to him. Still, how it all happened remains a mystery. Number 5. Wild goats. The story of the goat boy of the Andes came to light in 1990, when a boy was found roaming the Peruvian wilderness with a herd of wild goats. It was believed he was abandoned 8 years prior to that, and had survived drinking goat milk, and eating fruits and berries the goats were munching on. But the more amazing fact is that he managed to keep up with the goats while moving on all fours. Although he didn't talk at all, reports say he had some way of communicating with his goat friends. Number 4. Big cats. It seems improbable that apex predators from the big cat family wouldn't eat a child, but choose to raise it as their own instead. But there are at least two accounts of this happening. The first one happened in 1910s in India, when a leopard was seen taking a 2-year-old boy from a village. Everyone assumed the child was dead. Until 3 years later a hunter killed a leopard nearby. When the villagers went into its den, they found 2 leopard cubs and a 5-year-old boy, covered in scratches. The boy was returned to his parents, but kept wandering the village, tearing chickens to pieces and eating them raw. He would also refuse to sleep in the house, but chose the yard instead. Luckily, he was eventually socialized and he even got married. It's nice to see at least some of these stories have a happy end. Another account tells of a 12-year-old boy discharged from a hospital in Chile, in 1948, after being found living with pumas. It was said that the boy knew sign language and was able to somewhat communicate with people. But most of his story is unknown. Number 3. Dogs. Similar to wolves, dogs have been known to accept children into their pack. Sadly, most of these kids ended up with the animals, only because they were seriously neglected by their parents. Oksana Malaya was an Ukrainian girl who had alcoholic parents. At age 3, looking for comfort, she went into the kennel and snuggled with the dogs. It seems she had found her new family, because when she was 8 years old, she was found walking on all fours, barking. Similar to Oksana, there were 2 boys, one from Russia and another one from Chile, that roamed the streets with a pack of dogs. The first one, Ivan Mishukov, begged for food and shared it with the dogs. So it seems he was recognized as the pack leader. And he never truly lost his human capabilities. Unfortunately, the Chilean boy wasn't so lucky, as he was much more feral when he was found. It seems he had lived in a cave with a pack of dogs for 2 years. Even in the 21st century, these incredible stories of feral kids seem to be popping out all the time. Number 2. Monkeys. One species of animals that adopt human babies even more than the wolves are monkeys. Various stories such as those of Robert Mayanja, Saturday Mitiane and John Cesabunya tell us that children who get lost or abandoned in the jungle are sometimes taken care of by various types of monkeys and apes. However, no story is more tantalizing than that of Marina Chapman. Born in Colombia, Marina was kidnapped as a child and then abandoned in the jungle. Hungry and alone, she started following a group of capuchin monkeys and imitated their behavior, picking up what they threw to the ground. They eventually accepted her and she continued to live with them for 5 years. She managed to understand the different sounds the monkeys made. For example, louder screeching meant danger, but softer whistling meant food. She was eventually found by hunters and rescued, only to be sold to a brothel. At 14 though, she was adopted and later moved to the UK as a nanny for a wealthy family. Marina is one of the rare feral children who was successfully reintegrated into society. She later got married, wrote a book, and was part of a documentary by National Geographic. Some experts believe she is suffering from false memories. What do you think? Number 1. Wolves. Stories of wolves raising kids are abundant but also well documented. However, many of them turn out to be hoaxes. Like the story of the wolf girls of Midnapore, who were probably just severely neglected and abused children. Still, there are confirmed stories such as the so-called Russian werewolf. In 2007, a boy was seen running with a pack of wolves in the forests near Moscow. He was later found sleeping in a den made of leaves and taken to a hospital. He was acting like a wild animal, growling and biting. His nails were long and his teeth sharp, and he walked on all fours. The doctors didn't even get to do real tests, as the boy managed to escape. He was never seen again. Another interesting but highly unlikely story takes us to Devil's River, USA, around the 1830s. A woman went into difficult labor, so her husband hurried to town for some help. On the way back, he was hit by lightning and died. When people eventually got to his house, his wife was dead, and the baby was nowhere to be found. All that was found were wolf tracks, so everyone thought that the baby got eaten by hungry wolves. Supposedly, 10 years later there were multiple sightings of a girl running with a pack of wolves. If the sightings were true, there is a possibility the baby actually survived. Maybe the most inspiring though was the story of Marcos Rodriguez Pantoja, who was born in 1946. Supposedly when Marcos was 7, he was sold by his father to an old shepherd. The old man soon died, so Marcos was left alone. He wanted to go home, but got lost in the wilderness. Eventually he stumbled upon a cave, and saw 2 little wolf cubs. He snuggled with them and fell asleep. He woke up to see the mother wolf had returned to the den. Instead of eating him, she accepted him as a cub and gave him meat from the animals she hunted down. Marcos kept living with the wolves for the next 11 years. After that, he was caught and slowly reintegrated into society. But as an old man, he often wished to return to the animals as he saw that life with them was better than the one he had with humans. Makes you think about the true values in life, doesn't it? Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and want to see more, please subscribe and leave a comment. Until next time, keep surviving.